As someone who was practically raised on cartoons, I've come across plenty of memorable shows in my day. Some are well known for being timeless and entertaining, like Hey Arnold, SpongeBob, and Foster's Home, and some go down in history as complete disasters, like Johnny Test, Breadwinners, and Sanjay and Craig. But what about the more obscure shows from my youth? The ones that lasted for a very short time and are barely ever talked about anymore. You'd be surprised just how many smaller cartoons have come and gone throughout the years without ever picking up steam. Sometimes these shows were just straight up awful and couldn't retain an audience, for obvious reasons, and other times they were actually really good, but their networks pulled them before giving them a chance to shine. I personally find it interesting to look into these shows and see exactly what went wrong and whether or not they deserve to be remembered. And that's exactly what I plan to do with this segment. It's high time I give some attention to the cartoons that time forgot. So get ready, ladies and gentlemen, for Toons Lost in Time! And for our first episode, we need to go way back to when I was just a little kid. Space, the final frontier, home to many franchises we hold dear, with spaceships that travel across the skies, like the Falcon, the Axiom, and the Enterprise. But instead of discussing space battles and fights, big blaster shootouts and Jedi Knights, let's talk about two cuddly aliens instead, who travel the galaxy on their sofa bed. Do you remember Tiny Planets?
There's a tiny planet calling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
When it comes to cartoons aimed at very, very young children, what are some of the first things that come to mind? Sesame Street with its lovable characters and songs, Bob the Builder with its colorful humor and animation, Arthur with its amazing ability to tackle real-life lessons and issues. These shows have left their mark on the map of children's entertainment for a very good reason, and I'm very grateful that I had these while growing up. But if there was any cartoon aimed at young kids that I would label as underrated, it would be Tiny Planets. A short-lived animated series that ran for one season, which helped to teach kids about science, technology, nature, and self-help. Sounds like a typical educational program, but the particular way they taught these lessons was very different from most shows that were out at the time. What do I mean by that? Well, first let's look at some history. Tiny Planets was a British-produced children's show created by Casey Doobie in the early 2000s. It was a joint project from the likes of Pepper's Ghost Productions, which to my knowledge haven't really done anything else since, and believe it or not, the Sesame Workshop. Yup, the production company behind Sesame Street, one of the most well-loved children's franchises of all time, also worked on this show. Too bad there was never a crossover, cause seeing Bing and Bong as real-life Muppets would have been freaking amazing. It began its original run in the UK on CITV from 2001 to 2002, and was later imported to the American children's network Noggin, where it ran all the way until April of 2006. This is obviously where I first gained exposure to the show, as I would watch Noggin and Nick Jr. regularly when I was younger. Most of the programming on these networks were good, while the rest of it was...
Dora the Explorer!
No. Nope, nuh-uh, nope, ain't, no.
When it first premiered in the US, Tiny Planets didn't follow the traditional cartoon format of having 11-minute episodes or 22-minute episodes. Instead, it aired in small 5-minute segments that would play in between other shows. Kinda like those Nicktoons shorts that would show up during commercial time, like that one about the dog becoming leader of an alien race.
Leader. Dang, man, I could get used to this.
Yup, that was a thing. And it was awesome. After a while, it gained a pretty big following and even got upgraded to its own half-hour block on Noggin in 2004. If that wasn't enough, it also snagged a few awards of excellence during its time on the air, like the BAFTA Interactive Children's Entertainment Award in 2002, and the website based on the show earned the BAFTA Interactive Entertainment Website Award in 2001. So yeah, this show seemed to have a solid team behind it, a good following, and even some notoriety in the animation world. Yet 90% of people have probably never heard of it. Is that for good reason? The basic premise of this show is that two fluffy white aliens named Bing and Bong would travel across the universe on their magical flying couch, looking for people to help and problems to solve. As the title would suggest, there were many tiny planets that the two of them would visit. For instance, there was the planet of technology, which taught kids about the use of simple machines like levers, wheels, and pulleys, the planet of light and color, which taught them about optical techniques like mixing colors or casting shadows, the planet of nature, which taught them about natural processes like temperature and the water cycle, and the planet of stuff. Yeah, just stuff. Basically, it was for teaching them things like patterns and numbers and other things that didn't fit the other planets. Might as well just call it the tiny planet of etc. So in general, if you told Bill Nye to make his own version of Wander Over Yonder, this is what you'd come up with. So right off the bat, the premise is excellent. Setting the show in a fictional faraway galaxy gives you the liberty to create your own creatures, gadgets, planets, and rules, allowing the show to have its own unique flavor and identity. And this show takes full advantage of that, giving us things like flying couches, cake-baking robots, aliens that sound like chickens, fanny packs that can hold infinite objects, and even a sci-fi version of Candyland. Of course, the show applies some rules of realism when it comes to teaching the lessons, but as a whole, this show is just overflowing with creative ideas and designs, ensuring that many episodes will stick in a child's head. Speaking of the lessons, this show has such a diverse portfolio when it comes to teaching things. It covers certain basic morals like always be a good sport, the benefits of working as a team, making sure to eat healthy, and of course the importance of being nice to others. You know, typical stuff you'd see in a kid's show. But it extends further beyond that, with episodes that show the transfer of sound in an enclosed area, the importance of a solid base structure when designing a building, the creation of secondary colors, the basics of how animation works, and so many more. With such a wide variety of topics on display, this show has the potential to open children up to new venues and interests and desires for learning. Heck, I personally thank this show, along with the Magic School Bus, for awakening my love of science when I was little. But a lesson is only as good as the one teaching it. And as I said before, Tiny Planets has a very unique way of educating its audience. Unlike some children's shows which try to teach lessons with tediously slow pacing, obnoxious dialogue, and unnecessary narration, Tiny Planets manages to convey its messages with no dialogue at all. Yes, all throughout the show, neither the main characters nor the side characters speak a single word. Everything from the plot to the lesson is portrayed through the visuals, and it manages to be both slow enough so that the lesson sinks in, but also quick enough so that it doesn't get too grating or repetitive. Now, this is impressive because children's shows without dialogue can be very difficult to get right, especially those that aim to educate. You need to be able to capture the child's attention right away and never let go. Heck, some shows are so desperate to grab the kids' attention that they throw overly bright colors and obnoxious sounds in their faces, which make them seem kinda desperate. But with the combination of charming animation, adorable character designs, and great sound design, Tiny Planets really does have a lot to keep one's attention without going too overboard. But I think the thing that makes the lessons work the best are Bing and Bong themselves. On a surface level, they don't really have a huge amount of personality. Bing is the resourceful one who loves to help others and is often the one who solves the problem, while Bong is the cute little ball of childlike energy who's always jumping around and having fun. Basic stuff, but I think what makes them the most relatable to the audience is their willingness to experiment. When the duo are faced with a problem, they don't just look up the solution in a book or already have the answer. They test, they tinker, they try different things until they figure it out. And you know what? That's exactly what little kids do. When they encounter something they've never seen before, they shake it, they throw it, they stick it in their mouth or shove it up their nose. They practice with something until they find out what it can do, and so do Bing and Bong. Take for instance the episode The Fisher Bing. Bing wants to use a fishing hole, but there's a giant metal plate in the way. He tries to lift the plate while standing on top of it, that doesn't work. He tries to lift the plate while off of it, that doesn't work. He thinks about it for a little while and then gets the idea to use a nearby magnet on a pulley to lift it out of the way. And that finally works. He might seem kind of stupid on a surface level to some people, but when you realize that kids tend to work through trial and error in the exact same way, you start to get what they're going for, and I think it's really interesting. The sound design is kind of what you'd expect from most cartoons. They have a certain library of music cues and sound effects that often repeat between episodes, and I think it works well enough. They set the mood really well, like being calm and relaxing. Upbeat and fun. And of course, reflecting on a job well done. But absolutely nothing compares to one of the catchiest and most fun theme songs I have ever heard, period. To those of you that think the DuckTales theme is the king of catchiness, take a listen to this.
Heroes of the universe, adventure every day, from their home in space. There's a tiny planet calling, a new exciting day, and we're on our way.
Reaching out into other worlds. Satellite control. Satellite control.
Like, holy cow, I feel like I should be doing barrel rolls through the cosmos or something. That thumping beat, those zooming sound effects, that guitar riff after each verse. It fits the space setting of the show to a T. And even if you don't like the show personally, which I can totally understand, the earworminess of this song cannot be denied. If I did have any complaints to mention, it would be two things. First of all, the animation really hasn't aged that well. This is early 2000s CG, and it really does feel like it. A lot of the movements can feel stilted, there's not a lot of texturing on the characters or the backgrounds, and some of the special effects look really awkward. Like the episode What's Cooking, there's a scene where the cake explodes in the microwave and it goes everywhere. Like, wow, that is food fight levels of bad. And of course, certain animation bits tend to get repeated every now and then. But to be honest, I don't really blame the animators so much as I blame the technology at the time. In my opinion, I think they did the best with the tools they had. There's clearly tons of effort thrown into the visual style of the world, with each tiny planet having its own unique feel, like the planet of technology being all industrial and metallic looking, the planet of self being made up of these floating rocks and islands, the planet of light and color which has these planetary rings that look like film. It's all very imaginative. And of course, Bing and Bong have their fair share of memorable expressions and reactions to the world around them. My favorite comes from the light Fantastic, when Bing realizes he's in trouble. That always makes me smile. So yeah, pretty dated by today's standards, but it was a different time back then, and it's clear that they did care about quality, so I'll give them a pass. And hey, I'd much rather be watching this than the original pilot animation. Oh dear God, what did they do to you, Bong? It looks like they surgically attached Pac-Man's head to a spider's body. Those eyes. Ugh, is there a tiny planet of sunglass outlets? Cover those things up. However, while the visuals are debatable, there is one addition that I straight up disagree with, and it came when Tiny Planets got moved to a half-hour block.
I'm Hallie, by the way, and I'm here to tell you all about Bing and Bong's adventures.
This is Howie, voiced by Kim Goody, the same woman who sings the theme song actually. And I'm not gonna lie, her inclusion does take away one of the best parts of the show. Remember I said how unique it was that this show was capable of capturing children's attention without the need for constant narration or voice acting? Well, Hallie didn't get the memo apparently, because she narrates literally everything that goes on in each episode. And for those that remember the original shorts like me, it can get pretty obnoxious.
The rainbow disappeared when the other cloud passed and blocked out the sun. It's disappeared again, but this time the rain stopped falling too. Well done, Bong! Together, the two halves make a whole. Stuffing the pillow in the drum makes the noise softer. That flocker's eaten so much sugar it doesn't have the energy to play.
Alright, I get it!
I don't want to be too harsh because her voice acting is actually pretty great and she clearly sounds like she's having a lot of fun, but considering she doesn't actually show up in the show at all aside from the intros and segues between adventures, her narration just feels intrusive and awkward, sometimes killing the mood that certain scenes are trying to portray. She really doesn't belong here, especially since the show had been on for a while already and kids were able to keep up just fine without someone explaining every single scene. I will give the 30-minute block credit for one thing though. It does add a really nice intro where Hallie explains the premise of the show, introduces us to the characters, and tells us the planets we'll be visiting. If they kept her isolated to just the introduction and maybe the ending, I wouldn't have minded her, but having her speak all throughout the episode gets annoying really fast. But aside from Hallie and some dated animation, this show is incredibly solid in just about every aspect. It's not just good, it's freaking amazing. Noggin continued to air the Tiny Planets block until 2006 when it was eventually pulled from the network. It left the public eye for a little while, but then a few years later, the creators did something unexpected. On July 3rd of 2009, Tiny Planets got its own YouTube channel, complete with every 5-minute short available to watch for free. In fact, all the clips I got for this review came straight from the official channel, so if what I showed you interests you at all, feel free to stop by and have a look. They haven't uploaded anything in 2 years, heck, even their old website is currently down, but the channel does stand as a nice little time capsule to the fantastic show that the team created. So, should Tiny Planets be remembered? Is the sky blue? I know it may seem kinda silly to critically break down and praise a show aimed at such a young demographic, and I can understand if you feel that way, but just because the target audience is younger than me doesn't mean I can't praise it for doing something right. And I feel that Tiny Planets does almost everything right. The presentation is excellent, the visual style is creative, the characters are cute and lovable, the lessons are varied, the concept of having no dialogue is unique, and it just bleeds imagination at every angle. How this only lasted for a few years is beyond me. But overall, I feel like it had a great run, and it helped to inspire and educate kids like me, something that I'll always be thankful for. Thanks for all the good times, Bing and Bong, and may you forever soar through the cosmos of the minds you've fed and the hearts you've touched.